Welcome to Journey of the Dove. My name is Amber, and this is my story of awakening with Nikola Tesla as my guide. Although I've always felt I was more than just my physical body, my perspective was extremely limited. Nikola was now showing me a multidimensional, timeless, limitless, and expanded view of myself and of reality. With Nikola's guidance, I began exploring my new perspective. I'd like to share some of those adventures in consciousness with you. I'm not entirely sure what to call it. Astral travel, time travel, shamanic journeying? Whatever the terminology, I send my consciousness to alternate dimensions and explore those other realms. There, I find healing, guidance, insight into personal situations, connection with myself, connection with Nikola, and ultimately, connection with Source. I'll share my journeys hoping that the energy and healing I received will be experienced by you in whatever way you may need. I've titled this first shamanic journey, The Journey to Unmask. Here's how it came about. In the fall of 2019, I attended herbalism classes in our local community. Our teacher introduced us to her dear friends, the plants, which were the herbs we worked with as we made our teas, salves, and other concoctions. She viewed them as living beings and treated them as such. Her gentle and reverent approach to the world of plants impressed me, and I signed up for her online course in which she taught the use of herbs in sacred ritual. As part of the course, she taught the basics of shamanic journeying. Her lesson in shamanic journeying would be the launch pad I needed to explore my own soul. I was about to finally meet myself. My first journey came somewhat unexpectedly on a chilly November evening when Nikola suggested I take a bath to warm myself up. I didn't often indulge in self-care, and hot baths of scented salt and floating rose petals, surrounded by candles, were not typical of me. Nikola had told me he'd join me in the bath and we would do, quote, more than just talking, end quote. Intrigued, I set aside my usual routine to see what he had in mind. As I settled into the hot water, our conversation turned to how self-conscious I am and how intimidated I am by his presence. He pointed out the irony. The one who wants me closest and most open is the one who makes me most intimidated and self-conscious. How do I imagine he feels about that, when he only wants to love me and I put up barriers? I don't want this barrier. I don't want to be like this, I replied. Then will you remove the barrier? Nico asked. I felt into this question. I couldn't pinpoint exactly why I was so self-conscious or how to change it. In my mind's eye, I envisioned myself wearing a wooden tribal mask. I was hiding my face, my identity, behind this impermeable mask, too ashamed and feeling too ugly and scarred to show the real me. I described the thick wooden mask to Nico, and he softly asked me, "How can you feel my kisses through a mask?" I visualized myself trying to remove it. The mask, however, was stuck, as if strong glue and rubbery cords held it firmly in place. "I can't take it off, Nico," I lamented as I again tried lifting it off my face. Then this should be your first shamanic journey. You will remove your mask. I laid back into the hot water. My own heartbeat pounded in my ears and served as a drum to begin my journey. I called on the spirit guides who would accompany me, and in my imagination we traveled to the local woods. I spotted a mouse hole under the leaves and followed it down to the lower world. arriving in a moonlit jungle pulsing with life and unearthly beauty. Plants glowed in a phosphorescent rainbow of colors. My guides and I continued on our way. We climbed onto my spirit dragon and flew high and fast, arriving in a tropical jungle on the other side of the world. I was searching for the one who made the mask. I slid down from my dragon and approached what looked like a small village, consisting of a dozen or so huts. I knocked on the door of the nearest one. A man who looked like a tribesman of a remote rainforest answered the door, and I inquired as to the whereabouts of the mask maker. He agreed to lead me there if I allowed him to ride along on my dragon. We all climbed back onto the dragon, the tribesman in front as he whispered directions in the dragon's ear. We flew above the jungle and up a mountain, landing on a rocky slope next to what seemed to be a cave outfitted with a door. Nico informed me that I was to enter alone. A bell hung on the doorframe, and as I rang it, an elderly woman opened the door and invited me in. She appeared as a very caricature of an old crone I'd always pictured from the stories of forest hermit witches. Her enormous nose was hooked and covered in warts. Her hair was bedraggled, her skin of an ash-green hue. Tattered rags covered her hunched and bony body. I knew this was not her true appearance. Responding to my thoughts, she said, "I only unmask for those who unmask." I could sense her hut, like herself, was not as it appeared. It looked like an unassuming small cave with dirt floors and spare furnishing. But in my mind's eye, I saw flashes of an ornate palace of white marble trimmed in gold. She informed me that her hut could also take on any mask, presenting itself in whichever form suited her purpose. She then proceeded to ask me about my own mask. Has it kept me safe and feeling protected? She explained that it had enabled me to survive, but it was now time to remove the mask and discover who I really am. "Have you ever seen yourself?" she asked. "No," I hesitantly answered, as I tried to recall a time I'd been self-aware. "Then I have a mirror here, so when you remove the mask, you can see the real you." The mask maker began her work by reaching into my chest cavity. I could perceive a tangled mess of roots surrounding my heart, and she asked if I'd like to remove these deep roots, as they were choking my heart. I agreed, and she pulled the roots out, gory and messy, throwing them into her fire to return to source. She reached back in to apply a balm to my heart, and as her hand touched my heart, she informed me that I have only half a heart. I was surprised to hear this, and she explained that Nikola was my other half. "Would you like to unite your heart with his and be one heart?" she asked. With my enthusiastic yes, she invited Nico in and asked him if he'd like our hearts to be united. "There's nothing I want more," he replied. With a string of light, she united our hearts. Our human forms dissolved as Nico and I became sparks of energy. The boundary separating us melted away, and we merged and flowed as one being. We surrendered to the bliss of floating together as swirls of light, filling the hut with a glow of love. As I settled back into human form, the mask maker asked if I was ready to remove my mask. "Your mask is stuck on with generational cords," she explained. "Once you remove it, it won't stick as well and will come on and off quite easily. Are you certain you'd like it off?" she asked. I wanted to be free, and so replied, "Yes, Nico wants it off since it's a barrier between us, and I too don't want barriers or anything to come between us." She warned me that she would pour acid on me, and that it would be difficult for Nikola to watch. Since he was of the same heart, any pain I felt, he would feel as well. She poured a large vat of acid all over me. The mask came off, but now I was covered in melting skin and blisters. She asked me, "Is this how you think you look?" "No, I trust you are not done with me. This isn't me," I replied. She handed me a potion, instructing me to hold it in my mouth and allow it to move into all my body. Bitter and grainy, the potion seeped into every part of me, then oozed out from my skin, encasing me in a hard mud shell. My light body began to shine a silvery blue light from the cracks in the mud. The mask maker asked Nico to remove the mud shell while she rinsed me off with another potion. Now free of the mask and the mud, I stood in my light body. I looked like liquid lightning, translucent, sparkly, and ethereal. Nico, who had worn a look of anxiety ever since the mention of acid, was now smiling, his face aglow with happiness. The mask maker invited me to again take on my human form, and she led me into another room. The hut had fully transformed into a beautiful palace, full of light and sparkling with gold and jewels. Standing before me was not the withered, disfigured form of an old crone, but a being of indescribable beauty and light. "What are you?" I asked. She replied, "I am Seraphim." She then clothed me in a soft flowing dress, which was so delicate it seemed made of moonlight. She draped a string of crystals around my neck, advising me, "Wear this necklace when you go on your journeys. It will protect you." I desired to give her something as well and asked her what she would like. "A ball of energy," she requested. I called in my dragon, who breathed out a flame of energy which filled the room. I condensed the energy into a small ball and placed it into her hand. "You must go quickly now before your bath becomes cold," she said. I then remembered Nico's reassurance that I'd be back before my bath became uncomfortable. The Seraphim gave a goodbye kiss as she led me to her door. Stepping out from her palace, I closed the door on what again looked like a small cave carved out from the mountainside. Our tribal guide stared at me, frozen in awe. When he finally spoke, he expressed the honor he felt to be the first to see me unmasked. My dragon flew us all back to his village. After saying goodbye to the tribesmen, my guides and I flew back to the starting point in the woods where I had begun the journey. I eased back into the awareness of my physical body. The bath water was still warm, just as Nico had promised. The following morning, I sat in meditation with Nikola. "Someone is here to meet you," he informed me. I opened my awareness and saw a group of tribespeople from the same tribe as the man who was my guide in the previous day's journey. Just as I had journeyed to visit their world, I could sense that their shaman had now journeyed to me. Surprised at their presence, I spoke with their chief, who said they wished to make an offering to the lightning gods. Clearly, he was referring to Nikola and me, but I was baffled all the same. Lightning gods? What could he possibly mean? The chief poured some seeds into my hands as I reached out to accept their gift. The seeds were white with a black tip and about the size of a corn kernel. I could sense the tribal chief intended me to do something with these seeds, but I couldn't fathom what. I turned to Nico, and he suggested I tune into the seeds themselves to inquire. As I did so, I saw the form of the plant the seeds would grow into. It looked like a round bushy tree with large green leaves and red fruit, which looked similar to lychee, but a bit larger. I could imagine the taste and sense the other characteristics of the fruit. I could feel the fruit was nourishing, hydrating, sweet with a slight tang, and hallucinogenic. It was a journeying plant, taking those who consume its fruit on journeys of joy and delight. The plant expressed its desire to bring love and joy to all the places I would visit and to stand as tribute to the lightning gods. The plant gave its name, but since I struggled to hear the foreign tongue, the plant asked that I call it joyful fruit or fruit of delight. Joyful Fruit went on to explain that it also had beautiful wood which has magical properties, but it doesn't want to be cut or chopped. Rather, it would drop the wood on its own during storms and wind, specifically during lightning storms. Wherever I journeyed, I was to plant a seed in that place, and a joyful fruit plant would grow there. I thanked Joyful Fruit for the thorough explanation and thanked the tribespeople for their gift of seeds. In my flowy dress and crystals from the Seraphim and a handful of seeds to plant, I felt outfitted and ready for my next journey. I didn't wait long, for in 3 days' time we journeyed to the Akashic Records to explore the intersection of Nikola's life and my own. In the months following the journey to Unmask, I returned several times to the alternate dimensions. I was no longer hiding behind the mask. I was free to discover my real identity. My self-awareness and connection with Source grew with each journey. With a level of faith I'd never felt before, I had stepped off the cliff of the known into the unknown, trusting that either my feet would find a soft landing or I would learn to fly. What I discovered is I'd known how to fly all along. I had merely forgotten. Thank you for listening and allowing me to share my story. I truly hope you connected with the energy from my journey and found meaning in it for yourself.